No one beginning a data science project should start from a blinking cursor. In this video, I will show you how to use templates, prepared scripts that are designed to help you get started on your project fast and with maximum flexibility. There's two ways to think about templatization. One involves common directory structure across projects. We've talked already that any R project should contain at least two subdirectory, one containing the analytic scripts and another the data objects that we're using. Another way to think about templatization is that common script structure across reports. So each report, even though each project might have multiple reports, they all share the same structure. Therefore, it's easy to read one report and debug one report and then another. I have addressed how to start our project and how to separate analytic and annotation layers in separate videos. So please look to those videos for greater detail. But in this one, let's just remind ourselves the key concepts that we'll be using in this demonstration. So first of all, what we're doing, we're combining the R script with RMD script to produce an HTML. So R contains the directions, what computer is supposed to do, what operations to perform, and RMD contains the comments or the annotations aimed at humans to read, and the code and the annotations are combined in order to produce a single report in HTML format that could be either posted online or sent over email. Second, we must use RStudio project when we're working in this paradigm, and that has to do with number 3, because it allows us to control our home directory much better. So we always must know our root directory. So things to remember is that when we're working in R script, the root is where the R project is located. When we're working in RMD script, the root is where RMD file is located. Fourth, we use a function called knitter from the knitter package called read chunk in order to connect R to RMD script. We pass a function, we pass an argument called path, and we show the location of that R script where that RMD is supposed to connect to. Fifth, chunk names must be identical in R and RMD. This is how the report is put together. So it takes the names for those chunks in R and RMD report must be spelled exactly the same in order for it to work. And 6, it pays off to be aware of the chunk options within the RMD, because it helps you to control the way your report looks. So with these ideas and concepts in mind, let's take a look at our canvas, our environment. So I've launched my RStudio, and it's I'm running project 1. So let me double check that where my home directory is, home rec. So this is the location where my R project file is located. So this is the R project that I'm talking about. My project contains 2 subfolders that we're already familiar with. One that I dedicated to store data, and another one that I dedicated to store analytic scripts. So in my analysis, I already have 2 reports, so I will be creating a 3rd report in this video. These 2 folders help us separate data objects that we're working on from the scripts that we use to work on these data. And while they're absolute minimum in any data science project, I also like to have this 3rd subfolder called scripts that I use to store various starters. So let's look at it. So this README file describes the content of this folder. So this folder contains collections of scripts aimed at anticipating standard needs during analytical and publishing workflow. So if we look at it, we have a common functions here. This is a script that where I stored all the functions that that were proven to be useful from project to project, and you may develop your own custom functions as you expand your vocabulary of R and your repertoire as a data scientist. So this is common functions, and then I have two subfolders. One with graphing presets, things that would contain like standard themes, for example, or maybe the size of text that I would like to maintain from report to report in order to standardize the look of the reports across all the reports in my project. But the focus of today's is this content of this subfolder called starters. So there's many starters available, but for the simplicity, we'll just look at a basic starter report that I have developed and I'm passing on to you. These are called starter report and starterreport.rmd, starterreport.r and rmd. So let's take a look at these two files. First, let's take a look at the names of the chunks. So let's open the table of content and read aloud. So the first chunk is load packages, load sources, declare globals, load data, inspect data, tweak data, basic table, basic graph, and publish. These are exactly the same chunk names that occur in the RMD component of this workflow. So here it is. After the two mandatory chunks that do not have the name, right? We have load sources, load packages, load sources, declare globals. One exception gives this extra chunk that will be used only in RMD. Load data, inspect data, tweak data, basic table, basic graph. These chunks anticipate maybe 90% or 80% of all the reports that I'm currently doing. I'm not saying that this is always will be the case for your projects, but most of the times that's what I've discovered from my practice. I end up using all of these chunks and adding more if my reports require more complex tasks. Usually I add more tasks, but I always start with this one, and it saves me a lot of time because I don't have to type these chunks by hand. I just take both files and I quickly produce a report and I populate the chunks in order to get the results fast. One of the banes of this workflow, even though it affords a substantial flexibility because you can work really freely in R script, and then when you're ready to publish, you sort of line up this R script with your RMD annotation layer. So one of the banes of this workflow is having to make sure that the names of the chunk are correct. So when you work from a template, what I call a starter script, you are avoiding this pain and you're avoiding the debugging, the spelling of the chunks. So we have opened the starter scripts from our script starters subfolder, but we don't want to override them because we're going to be using them over and over. So the first thing you want to do when you're starting a new report, a new analytic task, you want to save them as the report that you want to create. So in our case, we're analysis. Let's create a new folder called my report-3, and we will create the same name for R and RMD script. So my report.3, and it's going to be R, and I do the same thing with RMD, save as, project 1, analysis, my report 3, my report 3, and I just changed the RMD extension. Okay, so now we got these two scripts that have the same name and they stored in the same folder. Let's double check. Analysis, my report 3, here they are. So let's look at the top of the R script. So you see your already well familiar lines that clear the variables from previous runs, so that clears your environment, and the line that clears your console. So you always start from a blank slate. So as the comment mentioned, these first few lines run only when this file R script is run in RStudio, not when RMD calls it. So this is for our convenience while working in R. So next chunk called load packages. So it's conveniently we typed up the most common packages that you're expected to use on a regular basis. So McGritter giving pipes, dplyr, ggplot, tidier, and if you need extra packages, I recommend adding packages here instead of in the body of the text, so that you can always see from a glance where what packages a particular report is using. Second, load sources. So we'll talk a little bit about this later, but for right now, we're just calling in extra scripts that that we've saved elsewhere that stores either some presets or some custom functions. Okay, so let's populate these just enough for us to make the initial report. So let's say that in the load data, we will define our DS as the cars data set from the package data sets. So I am pressing Control-Alt-B to run everything from top to bottom, which clears my console and my environment, loads my packages, and loads whatever dependency that I might want to have. Right, and so now I'm loading my data set in my load data chunk, and I will be inspecting my data set in my inspect data, and let's just limit it to 90 rows, maybe a little less, so it's easier to see in the console. So 70, would that work? No, we need to do even fewer. So let's do 50. Yes, right, so 50 observations, 2 variables, and here's the names and just a glimpse of this data. Okay, so now the script does something. So before we go any further, let's make sure that we can produce a report from the script. So I'm saving this R, and now I'm going back to my RMD script because now I want to knit this report. Okay, so what we need to understand is that as I reminded in the beginning, we must always know where the root of home directory. So when I am in my R script right here, the root get wd working directory is this. It's the project1 directory. However, when I start knitting this RMD, the root directory is changed, and I encourage you to look at the dedicated video where I explain this. So what we need to do is we need to adjust this root directory so that this RMD can find it. So this is being done with this opt-knit option when we set the root directory to whatever level that we need to get to from where the RMD is stored. So the RMD is stored, it's my report 3 is here, so we're going up 1 level, 2 dots, and another up 1 level. So this is what gets us to root, hence we use it 2 dots slash 2 dots slash, and we're back at the root. And now that we're in the root, now we redirected the RMD. Now we need to direct where this RMD should look for the programming layer of this report. And this is being done in line 42. And again, this is the beauty of using a template. You always know where these functions are being written out so that you can train yourself to go and look in a particular place to adjust it. So this path should bring us to the R file. And once again, where is our R file? Well, if we're referencing the root, it's within analysis, and then my report 3, and then it's called my report 3.r. So this is what we'll do, right? So we already have analysis, my report 3, and then the name of the report is my report 3.r, 3.r. And notice that this has only one dot. This is our convention for identifying the root or the working directory of the project, whereas 2 dots is a convention to go up one level of the hierarchy. And of course I need to correct this typo. My report 3 would not find it. One more comment about the RMD file. So notice that this has comments. So this is how you would comment the make a comment within the RMD file. And this comment really should read something like load packages that we used in this report. But my point is, notice that it uses these symbols in order to start the comment and these symbols to end the comment. It's not just like R uses just a hashtag in front at the beginning of the line. You have to open the comment and close the comment. Okay, we know that the template, the starters, are structured in the way that the order and the names of the chunks are matching. But I also like to have sort of a milestones in the script, just to navigate it easier. So I like to have everything before loading data is I'm calling environment. So notice that I use a single hashtag, and it's again in the RMD, in a markdown document, the hashtag implies the heading of a particular level. So this is level 1 heading. But in R script, it implies a comment. So don't confuse those two. Then I would like to have a heading for load data, and I also would like a heading for tweak data. Okay, so with these headings in place, I think I'm ready to knit the first draft of this report. So let's call it my report 3 and click knit. Let's see if it produces the report as we wanted. Yes, it can find the R script, so we've done a good job at specifying the location of the R, and it produces the viewer that we will expand in the browser if we would like to, in order to see how it's going to look in when it's finished. So again, we have these sections. We don't print anything from the environment, even though we load it. We can edit it in the chunk options, but we load the data and we inspect the data. So we don't see any script in these sections because we've chosen to have our echo option to be false, right? So we're not loading, this chunk option controls whether you want to print the content of the R script command. So if we were to change it to true and reknit it, we will see what happens in every R chunk that is being used. So let's see. There we go. So right, so it doesn't just prints the outputs, the results of those commands, but it prints the commands itself. So it's easy, it's convenient to do that. It's convenient to print all the R commands when you're developing the script, and then you turn it off so that the end user and reader of that report doesn't have to read the script, that it is too technical or it distracts them from noticing the most important information. Okay, so we're good to go. Now that we have the overall report stable, so whenever we add something to R, we can cross-reference it in R&D and knit it together. This allows us a much greater flexibility working with R script, because it's much more convenient to work in R script. So let's add a few things in order to maybe create a repeat of what we're doing, to see how we would add complexity of the script. So let's say that we would use this summary DS, right, in order to produce this, but I'm also gonna take advantage of some of the common functions that I've developed in order to create to adjust the view of this basic table. So right now, if we are to print this into the report, so let's add another level. This is our table. We'll call it, let's summary table, and we will knit this. Okay, if we see how this summary table appears and we compare it, it's okay, but there's better ways. There's ways to improve the look of this table, and this is we'll do this to demonstrate the utility of these custom functions. So if we go to this common function, there's a very neat functionality within RStudio, and that is to open up the scripts by pressing F2. So if you place your cursor anywhere in the script that is being sourced and press F2, it opens up the script, right, and you can see where it's located. But one of the custom functions that I know or is very good to use, that I've learned are very useful, is this knit. It actually a wrapper around a knitter cable, and I encourage you to look that up. It's very useful function in order to control the look of your table. But for right now, let's just treat it as a black box. Knit is a function for styling your tables. So I will create a duplicate of this line, and I will, oops, not this one, summary DS, and I will add the knit function. Again, knit is a custom function that I've created and I've sourced in this common function R. So let me save R, and I'm gonna re-knit this. There we go. So that's the difference. Here's our basic summary DS, and here is a much neater table. You see that there's some behavior once I roll over a particular row, so it's easier to distinguish. So here's the how you can augment the look of your tables within your HTML reports. And now let's add the minimum graph. So we wanted to, there's two variables, speed and dist. So let's just create a basic ggplot, and we'll map speed on X, and we'll map dist on Y, and all we do, we're just gonna add geom point to see a scatter plot of these two. So if we test it, this is what we'll see. But again, now I will use the graph preset that I've created before in order to spice it up a little bit. So again, I'm pressing F2 once I place my cursor on this path, and it opens the graph preset. And again, this is the script that I've accumulated over years of working with this, and I'm passing on to you. Feel free to use it and augment this as you gain more experience. But one thing that I like doing is I like having the same theme that sort of creates the style, the visual style of all the reports in the project, because projects usually involves multiple reports. We want the reports looking the same, so that you get an idea that they're part of the same project. So one way to do it is to create the theme that your all the graphs in your report, not just one report, but all the reports will be able to share. So I've created this object called main theme that uses certain settings. So I'm going to use that object, and I do this by just adding this object to the end of my ggplot, and it's already there because I've run it before. So, and if I do that, it offers me this clearest theme that, again, I can redistribute and reuse with other graphs. I save my R and I press my reknit my RMD in order to get the more updated report. We have the report inserted. So to summarize, no one beginning a data science project should start from a blinking cursor. We're using template to save us money, to save us time, and to make sure that our reports look the same or very, very similar from one report to another, because that's ease up cognitive strain on us when we go back and debug it. So we will all develop our personal style as we gain more experience, and creating these custom templates for us will be essential in our workflow. So we can think about creating common directory structure across projects, or common script structure across reports. A few things to remember. Remember the fundamental formula, R plus RMD equal HTML. It takes 2 files to produce the report. This is the standard workflow of creating reports. Yes, there's ways to only work with an RMD, and for super simple stuff, that's still an advisable direction. But if your analysis involves multiple data transformations, and most of them will, it's useful to use R and RMD formula in order to maximize the efficiency and convenience of your workflow. Don't forget to use RStudio project. It's crucial in order to understand where your home directory is. Remember that R and RMD have different roots. That's why we have to reconcile the root within the RMD. And we do this by setting the options in the read chunk function, directing the RMD where it needs to go in order to find the R script. The chunk names must be identical, otherwise you'll get a nasty error saying that it doesn't find your chunk, or you will not get an error and it will just omit the chunk from your workflow, and you will leave guessing why you don't see that the product of the output of that chunk in your final report. And finally, we want to pay attention to the chunk options if we want to control the appearance of the output.